This all happened years ago when I was just 12. I grew up in Pinegrove, a forgotten speck on the map that most GPS systems struggled to locate. It wasn't the picturesque small town you see in movies, more like a place slowly withering away. The lumber factory was always threatening closures. Our high school basketball team hadn't won a game in 3 seasons, and the storefronts on Center Avenue were more plywood than glass. We were a community in quiet decline, though few would say it aloud. Hope was something people collected in small doses like rainwater during a drought. And then there were the vanishings. Nobody talked about them directly, but everyone knew. Students, usually teenagers, occasionally younger, would simply stop showing up. One day they'd be complaining about algebra or talking about their first car, and the next, their seat would be vacant. Their backpack would disappear from the coat rack. The murmurs would begin. The official explanation, the one the adults repeated like a tired prayer, was that they left town, headed to Riverside or Oakville, chasing better opportunities, brighter futures, anything beyond our dying town's grasp. Most people chose to believe this story. It made a certain kind of sense. What young person wouldn't want to escape Pinegrove's slow decay? But even at 12, something about it felt wrong to me. Why would every single person who left cut all ties so completely? No messages, no calls, not even a rumor from a cousin's friend. It was as if they'd simply evaporated. Families grieved quietly, then eventually embraced the better life elsewhere story. It was more comforting than confronting the emptiness, the hollow absence where a child used to be. Believing they were thriving somewhere else was a way to keep despair at arm's length. If they could escape, maybe Pinegrove wasn't completely hopeless after all. I was a loner by nature, preferred books to people most days. My route home from Pinegrove Middle School was always the same, down Center Avenue, right onto Willow Street, then through the quiet residential area. It was predictable, uneventful, until that Tuesday in October. The day had been ordinary. Classes dragged on. The final bell rang. I hoisted my backpack and began my familiar journey home. The air had that distinct fall crispness, leaves crackling beneath my sneakers. I was halfway down Center when I first spotted him. He stood across the street, near the abandoned hardware store with its faded, going out of business sign. What made me notice him wasn't that he was there, but that he seemed out of place. He wore a suit, not a casual business suit like Principal Thornton wore, but something darker, more formal, and strangely rigid, like it wasn't made of fabric at all. And despite Pinegrove's ever-present dust and grime, it was immaculate. He stood perfectly still, like a heron watching a pond. I didn't think much about it initially. Maybe a lost businessman or someone visiting relatives. I kept walking. When I glanced across the street a block later, he was still there, but had moved. He was now directly across from me, keeping exact pace, still on the opposite sidewalk. A faint uneasiness crept up my spine. Probably nothing. Coincidence. I turned onto Willow Street, where traffic thinned and pedestrians were scarce. I risked a glance back. He'd made the turn too. He remained across the street, but was definitely following me. The casual air had vanished from his posture. He now walked with clear intent, his gaze fixed in my direction. My heartbeat quickened. This wasn't normal. Businessmen didn't follow kids home. I told myself to stay calm. Maybe he was just going the same way. But Willow Street didn't lead to any businesses, just more houses and eventually the abandoned recycling plant at the town's edge. I picked up my pace, not quite running but walking briskly. Another glance. He matched my speed effortlessly. The suit moved with him strangely, as if it were attached to him. His face remained indistinct from this distance, shadowed, but I could feel his attention like a physical weight. Cold panic bubbled up inside me. This wasn't coincidence. I needed to lose him. I knew these streets intimately. He couldn't. Instead of continuing toward my house, I made a sharp left into a narrow passage between two houses. It was a shortcut I sometimes used, overgrown with weeds and scattered with overturned recycling bins. It smelled damp and forgotten. I started jogging, my backpack bouncing against my spine. Emerging onto the next street, breathless, I looked back. For a few glorious seconds, the passage was empty. Relief flooded through me so powerfully my knees almost buckled. I'd lost him. Then he stepped out of the passage. He didn't appear winded or rushed. He simply materialized, smooth and silent, and immediately turned his head, his gaze locking onto me. The distance was shorter now, maybe half a block. I could see his face better. It was pale, unremarkable in features, yet completely expressionless. No anger, no curiosity, just an empty, waiting stillness. The suit remained spotless. Raw terror seized me. This was wrong. Very wrong. I ran. My house was now several blocks away in the opposite direction due to my detour. Ahead of me, at the end of this seldom-traveled road, was the town's abandoned recycling plant. It was a sprawling maze of rusted machinery, discarded containers, mountains of sorted and unsorted refuse. Local kids sometimes dared each other to explore it, but most avoided it. It was vast, chaotic, and treacherous. It was also my only chance. I ran harder than I ever had, legs pumping, lungs burning. The plant's chain-link fence, with its convenient tears and gaps, loomed closer. I didn't dare look back. I could hear his footsteps, though. A steady, rhythmic beat on the pavement behind me, never gaining, never falling behind. The consistency was unnerving. I dove through a hole in the fence, scraping my elbow, barely registering the pain through my fear. The recycling plant swallowed me. The smell hit immediately. Rust, decomposing paper, stagnant water, and something else, something sickly sweet. Towers of sorted materials created narrow, winding paths. I pushed deeper into the labyrinth, hoping the complexity would save me. I crouched behind a stack of flattened plastic containers, my heart pounding against my ribs like it might break free. I strained to hear past my ragged breathing. Silence, or what passed for silence here. The creak of metal, the rustle of paper in the breeze, the distant hum of the interstate. Maybe I'd actually lost him this time. The thought was a fragile spark of hope. He couldn't know these paths. He'd give up. I waited, huddled and trembling, for what felt like forever, but was probably only minutes. The adrenaline began to fade, leaving me shaky and cold. I needed to escape, but not back the way I came. There was another section of damaged fence on the far side, nearer to Bailey Woods. If I could reach it, I could cut through the trees and circle back to Pinegrove safely. Cautiously, I peered around the plastic containers. The narrow passage was empty. Taking a deep breath, I started moving again, trying to be silent, weaving through abandoned sorting machinery and mountains of paper waste. The sun was sinking lower, casting elongated shadows that seemed to reach for me with every breeze. The light was turning golden, signaling approaching evening. I was nearing what I judged to be the far edge of the plant. Through a gap in a pile of cardboard bales, I could see the ragged line of trees marking Bailey Woods. Freedom felt close. I navigated around an old conveyor belt, its mechanics long seized up, and then froze. He was there, standing directly in my path, not 10 feet away, by the very gap in the fence I'd been aiming for. Just waiting, as if he'd known exactly where I was heading. My blood turned to ice. Every instinct screamed danger. His face remained expressionless. No triumph, no anger, just that same blank, patient watchfulness. The impeccably clean suit seemed to absorb the fading light, making him appear darker, more solid than his surroundings. He took a step toward me. A choked sob escaped my throat. I didn't think. I reacted. I spun around and plunged back into the maze, deeper this time. No plan, just desperate flight. This time, I heard him immediately, and he was faster, much faster. His footsteps weren't the steady rhythm from before. They were quick, unervingly light, yet covering ground at impossible speed for someone navigating this dangerous terrain in a suit. Like he was gliding over the debris. Panic clawed at my throat, making breathing difficult. I stumbled, caught myself, pushed on. My lungs burned. My scraped elbow throbbed. Tears blurred my vision. He was getting closer. I spotted a small, dark opening beneath a pile of crushed aluminum cans, compressed into dense blocks. It formed a makeshift cave of metal. Without hesitation, I threw myself down and squirmed into the tight space. It was cramped, filthy, smelling of stale soda and damp earth. Sharp edges pressed into me from all sides. I squeezed myself as far back as possible, until my shoulders hit unyielding ground. I was completely hidden, wrapped in darkness except for a sliver of grayish light filtering through a small gap near the front. I held my breath, listening. Silence. Then, footsteps. Slow now, measured. Moving around the pile I hid under. I heard the crunch of debris beneath his shoes. Occasional soft metallic clinks. He was searching. Through the tiny gap, I glimpsed a sliver of his dark trousers pass by. Then again. He was circling. My heart threatened to explode. I pressed my face into the dirt, trying to muffle my terrified breaths. Every instinct screamed at me to become invisible, to melt into the earth and metal surrounding me. The sun was definitely setting now. The already dim light filtering into my hiding spot faded rapidly. The shadows outside lengthened, merged, consuming details. Then he spoke. His voice was calm, almost gentle, but carried an unnatural vibration that resonated through the metal around me. "Come out now, child." Pause. "There's no need to hide. We can just talk." Talk? The absurdity of it sent fresh fear through me. What could we possibly discuss? I remained frozen, silent. "I know you're somewhere in here," his voice continued, still calm but with a new edge, like a knife slowly being unsheathed. "This place isn't that large. I'll find you." He moved again, footsteps methodically covering the area around my hiding spot. I heard him shifting debris, metal scraping against metal. Each sound jolted through me. The light through my gap had almost vanished. It was becoming truly dark under the cans. And then the voice changed. "Honey, are you in there? It's Dad." My blood froze. It was my father's voice. Not similar, it was his. The exact tone, the slight rasp, the way he slightly emphasized the word honey. The sound of it, so familiar and comforting in any other situation, was now utterly terrifying. "Kiddo, please come out. I've been worried sick when you didn't come home. What are you doing in this dangerous place? Come out, it's getting dark. Let's go home." Part of my brain, the logical part, knew it couldn't be him. But the fear, coupled with that perfect imitation. A tiny part of me wanted to believe it, wanted to crawl out and find my dad there, to end this nightmare. "Please, honey," the voice pleaded, perfectly mimicking paternal concern. "You're worrying me. Just come out. Everything will be fine." Silent tears streamed down my face, born of pure terror and confusion. I bit my lip hard to prevent making any sound. Tasting blood. He was trying to lure me out. He knew my father's voice. How could he possibly know that? The last traces of daylight vanished. The recycling plant plunged into near-total darkness, relieved only by faint ambient glow from distant Pinegrove, which barely reached this deep into the plant. Under the cans, it was absolute blackness. I was blind, relying solely on sound. I thought I was doomed. He would find me. He was patient, methodical, only a matter of time. The voice, my father's voice, had stopped. There was only silence for a moment, heavy with anticipation. Then a new sound, a low moan, guttural and pained. Not human. It was followed by a rasping, wet growl, like an animal in distress. It seemed to come from just outside my hiding spot. My fear intensified beyond what I thought possible. What was happening? The growls grew louder, mixed with harsh, choking sounds. He seemed to be in agony, like the darkness itself was causing him pain. And then, his own voice again, but ragged now, strained, filled with furious, desperate anger far more terrifying than his earlier calm. Accursed timing. The light, gone too soon. Another pained snarl. Then, chillingly clear, his words cut through the night, echoing in the sudden stillness. "I will find you eventually, child. Just wait for another day's sun." A strange rustling sound followed, like paper being crumpled or sand pouring onto concrete. It lasted only seconds, and then nothing. Absolute silence. No footsteps, no breathing, no pain growls. He was gone. I remained huddled in that metallic refuge for what felt like hours, too terrified to move, too shocked to process. Eventually, cramping limbs and the desperate need to escape the crushing darkness forced me to act. Trembling uncontrollably, I slowly, painfully pushed myself out from under the cans. The plant was utterly dark, except for faint moonlight that had risen. I stood shaking, expecting him to reappear any moment. But there was nothing, no sign of him. Where he had been standing, or where I thought he had been from the sounds, there was just ash. A faint, fine layer of something dark on the ground, already dispersing in the night breeze. It looked like extremely fine dust, out of place among the damp earth and rusted metal. I didn't stay to examine it. I ran. I ran out of that plant the way I'd come, not caring about noise, driven by primal terror that gave my legs impossible strength. I ran through dark streets, not stopping until I crashed through my front door, gasping for breath, collapsing in our entryway. My parents were frantic. I was filthy, my elbow bleeding, clothes torn, hysterical. I tried to tell them about the man, the suit, the plant, his voice, my father's voice, but it emerged as jumbled nonsense. They thought I'd had a scare, maybe chased by a stray dog, or encountered some teenage troublemakers. They cleaned me up, bandaged my elbow, and put me to bed. I never told them the complete truth. How could I? How could I explain that the man who chased me, who sounded exactly like my father, had turned to ash when night fell? They would have thought I was delusional. Maybe I was. But I know what I saw, and I know what I heard. That thing in the suit wasn't just a predator or kidnapper. It was something else. Something that couldn't endure the night, or perhaps couldn't maintain physical form without daylight. Something that hunted in the full light of day. The vanishings in Pinegrove, I began to see them differently. Were they really all just kids seeking better lives elsewhere? Or had some of them, like me, taken a wrong turn on their way home, on days when the sun didn't set quite quickly enough? Had they been lured by familiar voices from their hiding places into waiting arms? The thought makes me ill. That promise, "I will find you eventually, child. Just wait for another day's sun," has haunted me since. I left Pinegrove as soon as I could. I try to live normally, but I'm always conscious of the sun. I avoid being alone outdoors during peak daylight, and sometimes on quiet evenings when shadows lengthen, I think I hear a faint rustling, like paper or ash. I don't know why it seemed to turn to dust. I don't know what it was, but I know it was real, and I know it wanted me. The empty spaces in Pinegrove weren't just ambitious youth leaving for brighter futures. Some of those spaces were carved out by things that thrive under the daylight.